Hi, welcome to the Thinker's Lounge, where today we'll be reviewing the billion dollar whale, the man who fooled Wall Street, Hollywood, and the world. This book is about the real life multi billion dollar heist by Jho Low, and it includes murder, corruption, A-list celebrities like Miranda Kerr, Leonardo DiCaprio. And really, this story is about deception and manipulation of the global financial system. How is it that big institutions such as Goldman Sachs can be complicit in a scheme like this? Well, this book has the answers. And if you have been following this story about Jho Low, 1MDB, or Prime Minister Najib, our former Prime Minister of Malaysia, then this is an exciting read because this book dives into details which you would never have read in the news. And all of the interlinking relationships is absolutely mind-boggling. But what I love about the authors, Tom Wright and Bradley Hope, they were from the Wall Street Journal and they started reporting on this since 2015. What they've been able to do is to really distill all of this complex scenarios into an easy to read form. And I find that, personally, this story really strikes really close to home, a bit too close to home, right? Because Jho Low's family is actually a family friend. It's my I come from Penang, Malaysia, and is the hometown of Jho Low and his family. And Penang Island is a very small island, and it so happens that my family knows Tan Sri Larry Low as well, which is Jho Low's father. And in fact, he's my high school senior. So when news struck about Jho Low and how this Penangite managed to squander the money of what's supposed to be invested into Malaysia, it was absolutely shocking. How could this have happened? So this book, from the very beginning, it really dives into Jho Low's family. It talks about Jho Low's grandfather and the rumors of how he came from China all the way to Malaysia, and no one really knows the background of Jho Low's grandfather. There are even rumors that he used to deal opium back in those days. But what's really interesting is how they were able to characterize Jho Low's father, Larry Low, where you can see that even Larry Low has a shady background. He's known not to honor his debts and to be cheating around in business, but they don't really go that deep into that. I find that the authors are able to encapsulate the family dynamic and to show you the kind of environment that Jho Low has been brought up in. And you can see that since he was young, he was molded to be able to be, someone really powerful in this world. From a very young age, Jho Low's dad has sent him to the most prestigious schools, such as Harrow School in England, and all the way to Wharton, where Jho Low's dad believed that you should invest in your network. And by placing Jho Low in these prestigious schools, he's able to rub shoulders with royalties, politicians, political leaders, their sons and daughters. And this is exactly what happened in Jho Low's case. And what you find is that this book shows the character of Jho Low as someone who is constantly wanting more, who wants to really establish his status in the world and in the eyes of the public. You know, he is also very awkward around women, surprisingly, and at the same time, he loves being around women. This book shares stories about how he would throw, multi-million-dollar parties, inviting women, the most beautiful women in the world, to surround him. But you don't he's really socially awkward. So what I found interesting is that since young, he tried to craft this image, of someone to be reckoned with, a high roller, someone you wanted to be connected with. Back when he was in Harrow, he spent 40,000, in a single night in the club, giving out exclusive invitations to the the most well-known people in the school. And what I find is that this pattern continues throughout his entire life, where it's all about image, but not really about substance. And the reason why I don't say about substance is, for example, that 40,000 which he spent on his birthday in the club. Everybody thought, wow, Jho Low is this big guy to be reckoned with, and he's doing all these champagne showers, but on the back end, he did not really put up the entire amount for the event, and in the end, the club had to constantly chase him before they had to give him a steep discount, and he only agreed to pay them back. So you can see that since his younger days, Jho Low has already been a very shady character. And what I find is that this book really emphasizes the importance of connections, how important it is to have connections in the business world in order to make things happen. Jho Low's first break came from rubbing shoulders with the Middle Eastern royalties, and also to getting to know Riza Aziz, which is Najib's stepson from Rosmah's side, and Rosmah being Najib's wife, for those of you who don't know, second wife. Throughout this book, you can see how Jho Low has been leveraging off his connections, constantly name dropping in order to get onto the next deal. And you find that his inspiration came from the Middle East, when he's seen this multi-billion-dollar fund, to be able to just deploy billions of dollars anywhere around the world, at the whims of the fund. So that's how he came up with the idea of 1MDB. And it really shows how in this shadow world of finance, Jho Low was able to manipulate his way, conning compliance officers in the major banks, but not only that, to show that there are glaringly obvious conflicts of interest when it comes to deals regarding the banks. And they really shone the spotlight on Goldman Sachs. How is it that Goldman Sachs had inklings that Jho Low was a very shady character, but they insisted on pushing the deals through, raising billions of dollars in bonds for the state fund of Malaysia, 1MDB, and having inklings that Jho Low was the one behind all of this. And it's absolutely ridiculous, to say the very least. And for those of you who have been following this news, you'll be glad to find that Rosmah plays a big well, not really a big role in this, but she really comes up every now and then in this story, to show how greedy she was, how she grew up in the background of uh, power, in the sense where she was adopted by one of the sultans, and then by being surrounded with all of this wealth and power, she wanted to own it herself. And it really shows how her deep-rooted insecurity then evolves into her wanting, more jewelry, more Hermes or Birkin bags. You know, it's fascinating. You get insights into the mind of Rosmah as well, and you can see as the story develops how this greed just keeps evolving. It snowballs into bigger and bigger schemes. Imagine it started from $1 billion, that's big enough, right? To an estimated of $7 billion. Just imagine, what if that $7 billion actually went into the pockets of everyday Malaysians, where it's actually invested in Malaysia instead of the pockets of Jho Low and his conspirators, including Najib with his famous $681 million deposited into his account. And that's just one of the biggest transactions, right? And it it really shows you that there's no limits to human greed. And but what happens after that is that when the domino starts falling, that's when things gets even more interesting, where you see this fight of perception. How is it that Najib wanted to control the perception of the public when all of these leaks and the Wall Street Journal starts posting up the news, and how they try to discredit the sources. And I find that this is an ongoing challenge that we are all facing today in this information world. How do we know what's the truth, right? And as the dominoes start falling, you start seeing and questioning, will there be honor amongst thieves, right? You find Jho Low starting to throw his conspirators under the bus, not literally, of course, but trying to have individuals take the blame. And you can also see, in recent times, Najib has been trying to push the blame all the way to Jho Low and say, he's the mastermind, not me, right? That $681 million is just a donation from an Arab royalty, right? Who's going to buy into that, right? So as the dominoes start falling, you can see everything just coming apart, and how Jho Low has been trying to escape of the authorities, and as Interpol starts getting roped in, how his options are getting more and more limited, until today he's speculated to be in China, where China may be using him as a bargaining chip. So this book, what I love about it is that it also captures the rise of Malaysia. How is it that Malaysians got fed up of the corruption that's been going on in our country all these decades or years, and finally this was the straw that broke the camel's back. It was able to bring all of the Malaysians together to vote the corrupted powers out, and to bring a new hope to Malaysia. So who is this book for? It's, if you're into politics, finance, economics, and international business, this is definitely the book for you. Or if you just want to see how wild this world of high finance is, this is the book for you. Well, I would rate it, a 9.9 out of 10. Well, now what happened to that 0.1? The only qualm that I had with this book was if, and this is a big if, the author's intention was to frame this book as income inequality, and in a capitalist society, then I felt that it would have been better framed as greed, corruption, and manipulation of the financial system instead. But if that's not the case, then you have my full 10 out of 10. So if you find that this book is for you, I've shared a link in the description below where you can get a copy for yourselves. And of course, let's keep the conversation going. Drop a comment after you've watched this video, and also remember to follow, subscribe, and turn on notifications. So until next time, thank you for listening to Thinkers Lounge.